Hi, I'm Coach Mick, and I'd like to welcome you to video number 1 of our 10-part series on the serve. And the first video is titled Preparation or Planning. And there's two things that have to happen here, one physically and one mentally. Now, physically, it's pretty simple. You're going to want to make sure you're sideways, where you're comfortable. You know, you might take a lesson where a pro will tell you point your front toe at the net post and your back toe, make sure it's parallel to the baseline, and if you drew a line between your two toes, it should go to the middle of the box you're serving to. And that's a great start. But most importantly, you just want to make sure you're comfortable, because if you're starting to hit a serve in a position where you're not comfortable, that's just not a good place to start. So make sure you're comfortably sideways. All right, number 2, you're going to want to make sure your racket and your hands are out in front of you, even over the baseline. And this is going to be important later on when it comes to acceleration. Now, mentally, there's 3 things you're going to want to do here in the preparation or planning stage just to make it a little bit more positive, or to build your confidence a little bit. Now remember, we always say here at the Real Tennis Network that if you fail to plan, plan on failing. And this is where these 3 mental steps come in. And the first one is just your rituals. And what rituals are, it's just some action that you do that's exactly the same before you serve. For example, when I hit a first serve, I like to bounce the ball 3 times and I count to 3 in my head. And if I miss my first serve, I bounce the ball 2 times and count to 2 in my head. And I do this every time. You may see basketball players do this up at the free throw line. Before every free throw, they'll bounce the ball or do the same mannerisms before each free throw. And the reason we do this is to be able to perform under pressure. So when you have to make that big serve when in the 3rd set at 5-all, or just to end the game, you're going to put yourself in a situation that you're comfortable doing because you've done it over and over and over again. And one player that does this extremely well is Maria Sharapova, where you'll see before every point, she turns her back to her opponent, and then you can see her fixing her hair, but also just thinking about what she's going to do in the next point and imagining herself doing this. And that's called imagery. And imagery is very, very powerful when it comes to mental toughness, because your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not. So if you could imagine yourself doing it, then your body's going to put a check mark in the plus column like you've actually done that. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do mentally is just plan on where you're going to hit the serve and how you're going to hit the serve. So you may plan on hitting it up the tee, maybe wide, maybe right at them, and try to jam them up a little bit. And then also, if you're going to serve with slice, flat, kick, you're going to want to plan that out and visualize yourself doing that. Again, this is very powerful. And the third thing, which I'm sure a lot of people may do, but a lot of people don't, is just to plan on what you're going to do with your second shot. And again, you want to visualize this. For example, I may want to serve my first serve wide, since I'm a right-hander, on the deuce side, and then visualize myself hitting my second shot to the open court. And if I can visualize this before the point starts, it's going to build up my confidence, because basically I've already seen myself do it. So I just have to do what I just did, and my body checked it off as I've done it once, so why can't I do it again? And that's kind of the idea behind imagery. All right, we're going to look at stage 1 here, the preparation stage. And this is Grigor Dimitrov, and he is probably the closest thing I've seen to Roger Federer other than Roger Federer. He's a Federer clone. If you watch his game, it's like he has patterned his game, in my opinion, after Roger Federer. And who wouldn't, right? And I guess they were both coached by Peter Lundgren, that's right, at one time, so maybe he had something to do with it. But the preparation stage is, first of all, the simple, efficient tennis solution is to get sideways and plan out what you're going to do. So you can see here where Dimitrov is sideways and he's comfortable, and his weight should be on his front foot right here, which it is. And you can see that his racket is out in front of him. So those 2 things are real important. All right, so he has weight on the front foot, racket out in front, because he's going to start that weight transfer, and he's going to go from his front foot to his back foot. Now also, just before this, he probably performed his ritual, which might have been bouncing the ball the same amount of times, or whatever he does. You'll see a Sharapova kind of turn her back to her opponent and go back there like we said earlier, and she does her own thing. If you watch Djokovic, he'll bounce the ball a number of times, but most players will do the same thing before they come up to the line or as they come up to the line. Now, in this stage also, it's really important that he is planning where and how he's going to hit the ball. For example, he may be thinking, well, I want to hit the ball wide and I want to slice it so I can pull my opponent off the court. And he's going to want to visualize this in his head of him hitting a slice wide. And doing that is very powerful, especially just before you do it, to visualize yourself doing exactly what you want to do. Now, on top of that, he's going to want to visualize what the plan is even for the next shot. So he may say, okay, I'm going to slice it wide, and if my opponent hits down the line, I'm going to hit a backhand cross court. And if my opponent hits cross court, I'm going to hit a forehand down the line. And visualize yourself doing that. And once again, that's very powerful. So pretty simple stage. You're just going to want to get sideways and plan out what you're going to do. Well, I hope you enjoyed this first video on planning and preparation in our 10-part series on serving. And remember, for more tips and instruction, you can go to realtennisnetwork.com.